You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers, about hikers, for everybody.
Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. Join Steve and his guests every week as he staggers from Georgia to Maine.
Hi everybody, and thanks once more for tuning in to Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. We're back to our regular shows right now, and this week I wanted something visceral, an instant reaction to completing the trail. So a couple of days ago, actually I think it was last Saturday, I was browsing through Facebook and came upon the summit photo for today's guest, Olivia Bakke. She summited on the Thursday, so that's about a week, about a week ago. In fact, exactly a week ago, if you're listening on Thursday. But it was 2 days prior to me finding her. So I reached out to her, as you do, and she responded really positively, which was nice. Normally when I do these shows, I have a pre-interview chat to kind of work out where we're going to be talking about, This time I thought to myself, if I'm asking for her immediate reaction, I think it might make sense for me to ask questions in the same manner. So last Sunday morning, we just chatted, and today's interview is a result of that chat. Olivia will be on soon. In our Mighty Blue Class of 2019 roundup, I'm talking this week with Lea Ann Hogan, one of our members who didn't make it to the end. Lea Ann was lovely to meet in person. She seemed so genuine, and I wanted to hear more of why she had to finish. I think you'll enjoy hearing from her and her reason. Finally, we're on to Chapter 3 of Hiking Through by Paul Stutzman, when he takes his very first steps on the trail. So that's the show. Let's get on with it and hear from Olivia Bakke, or Mama Lion. Okay, now I don't normally do this. I don't conduct interviews in this way, but I've just about to speak to a lady. Her name is Olivia Bakke, B-A-K-K-E. Hi, Olivia. How are you?
Hello. How are you?
I'm not too bad. And the reason I'm doing this, Olivia actually, and we're recording now on the Sunday, so this is only 3 days after you summited Katahdin. Is that right? 3 or 4 days?
Yeah, and so it was the 13th of September, 12th of September I was summited.
You can't start forgetting the date already, I tell you. You're going to remember that date the rest of your life.
It was a bit of a fumble because we had planned that I would summit on the 11th of September, but then it was raining all day.
Yes.
And so we ended up summiting on the 12th, which turned out to be a beautiful day with panoramic views and worked out really, really well.
Yeah, I saw some of your Facebook pictures and they look lovely. Yes, you did have a lovely day for it, no doubt. So, and I say, I don't normally conduct interviews in this way. So I normally have a conversation with people first. But what I'm looking for in this particular one, having done it myself this year and experiencing some changes to what I thought I would think when I finished, I'm looking for that visceral, immediate reaction to your completing the AT. So how does it feel like to know what you've achieved, and how does it differ from your 2015 PCT through hike?
So viscerally, it was a very different hike. I was by myself part of the time, and with my son part of the time.
Yeah.
And on the Pacific Crest Trail, I was with my son the entire time. So that's different. I found that I learned a lot again on this trail, and I was very much more comfortable with just the aloneness.
Being alone was by choice, was it?
A lot of the time. I did get tired near the end of being by myself, and everyone had already kind of paired up and teamed up into small groups, and I still was spending a lot of time by myself. I did feel like people would rush past on the trail without taking the time to have conversations, where on the PCT, where I met less people, I felt like a larger percentage of people I met when I was hiking during the day, even if they were faster, would slow their pace for a bit and have a chat. That didn't happen nearly as frequently on the AT.
That's interesting. So, was that right?
Yeah.
Was that right from the beginning? Because it's supposed to be the friendly trail, isn't it? So that wasn't your experience as much then, was it?
Yeah, it wasn't my experience. And I was really surprised because everyone that had hiked previously said, there's so much community, you'll meet so many people. And I did meet a lot of people, but I didn't meet a lot of people when I was actually hiking, which is most of the time. I choose to spend most of my time hiking and not in town.
Right.
And so, I was hoping to meet more people who just enjoyed hiking
I'm really
chatting a bit.
I tell you, I'm surprised at that. I really am. But this your experience is your experience. So when did you set out then? When did you start the hike?
So I started on March 28th,
right.
And I, as a repeat through hiker, I had kind of my system dialed in. I kind of knew how my body would respond. I knew what I wanted to do and how I wanted to increase my distance and my mileage each day, even though it'd been several years.
Sure.
I tended to be faster in the beginning.
Right.
In Georgia, I tended to be faster, so I would only see the same people maybe 1 or 2 days.
Right.
And then I would just be faster by, maybe only 3 to 5 miles, but it was enough that over a week I was significantly ahead.
Yeah. So, and you said you had your system, as it were, dialed in. Did you change much in terms of gear from 2015? And did you change much in terms of water? Because I know apparently the PCT is one that you really need a lot of water, don't you?
Yeah, so both of those did change. I changed from an REI half dome tent. That was the biggest change, and I selected the Z-Pack duplex for this trip. So that was a huge savings in weight and volume in my pack. Yes. And I was really pleased with that choice.
Yes. I had exactly the same, by the way. I loved it as well. I absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a really, everything about it. I was concerned when I first received it about durability, and some people had mentioned the seam tape lifting, but I didn't experience either of those issues. I didn't get any punctures the entire trip. It made it through the entire trip, camping almost every night. I mean, I didn't sleep in shelters very frequently.
Right.
And so I set it up almost every day. And, I feel like I could take it out on another through hiking and it would be just fine.
So you didn't go into town that much then?
Not too much. I really prefer to hike. I mean, I live in a really beautiful urban city in Portland, Oregon. Yeah. And so if I wanted to be in town, I have a really nice home.
Most of the towns on the
AT,
most of the towns on the AT are going to be a disappointment compared to Portland, Oregon, I suspect. It's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and you mentioned that you did the PCT, the whole of the PCT with your son, and I know your son joined you about mile 1300 this time, didn't he? Is he 12 now, or was he 12 when he did the PCT?
He's 12 now. Right.
Wow.
He's 12.
So he did. Yeah. It was so 8. He was 8 when he did the PCT. Oh, 9 when he did the PCT.
9. Yeah, he just turned 9. So he turned 9 in March, and we left in March.
Now, this is exactly what the sort of reason I want to do this without knowing anything about this. I've cyber-stalked you a little bit on Facebook, which is kind of spooky, but, and so he did this at the age of 8. What made you think that would be a good idea for a young lad to do, just as a matter of interest?
I didn't know any better.
Oh, right. Okay.
And also just, every parent-child relationship is different, and every child is different.
Yeah.
And I really wanted to show my son what adventures were out there. And I also felt like middle school and high school for him might be a little rough. And I wanted to show him that there was something beyond that was awesome.
Wow. That's an interesting thing.
And I also just was like, this is, the land is the inheritance that I can give him. I can teach him that this is what's worth protecting, the plants and animals and the land, and just to show him the joy of outdoor recreation and just the power of walking. And
did he take to it straight away?
So we've been hiking since he was 4, and he does it. He likes the camping part, and he prefers, he really is motivated by getting into towns and having hamburgers and things like that. I do think he appreciates the things that we see along the way. We've spent a lot of time talking about, identifying different plants that we see, and talking about environmental concerns.
Wow.
And, he's learned about the importance of clean water. and the importance of, being a hygienic and tidy person. It's just so many lessons.
He got sick on the way, didn't he? Was that to do with water?
We're not sure what happened. He was sick for about 3 days with intestinal problems.
Yeah.
Basically emergency bathroom.
Right.
And so finally, after 3 days, I was concerned. So I took him to the doctor, and she said, it's none of the big ones that we are worried about, but it's going to take like 2 weeks to figure out specifically what virus this is.
Sure.
But I suggest just staying near a bathroom until he feels better. So that's what we did.
He's in the woods.
And we just don't know.
He's in the woods. He's in a constant bathroom.
Yeah. There's so many things that could have happened.
Yeah.
So many different things that could have happened. Usually if he gets sick, I get sick because we're drinking out of the same water bottles.
Sure.
And we're family. So everything gets swapped up. So, but I didn't get sick, so I don't know what happened.
Well, I saw a very cute video of him walking along. I don't know whether you knew you were filming him playing the ukulele, which I thought was pretty cool. When he was walking along playing the ukulele, singing while he was on the trail, and he obviously it sounded like he was enjoying himself anyway. Yeah,
he was having a really good. Yeah, he does have a good time, and that was a really fun day. The trail was smooth enough, and he enjoys his ukulele. On our PCT trip, we have a hiking friends that we spent about 700 miles with.
Wow.
And Prince played the ukulele many evenings while Emerson was falling to sleep. And so Emerson got home, and we got him a ukulele, and he picked it up on his own.
Oh, nice. And I know, so was that the time that you went into New York City? Is that the time you took off the trail and your husband turned up? Or am I getting my timing wrong here?
Oh, in New York City?
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's see. So Emerson came to meet me on his summer break. So it was just the end of June. And then we decided that I would just go with Pete into New York while he spent a week at the headquarters for his company. And so I just stayed with him. And then Pete brought us back out after 5 days, I think.
Now I'm confused. Now I'm totally confused. Mm-hmm. So Boone's your son.
Yep.
Emerson is who?
Boone's my son. Yep.
Emerson is who?
Emerson is also my son. Emerson is is his given name. I'm sorry.
Okay.
My son's given name is Emerson on social media, and I just put Boone because that's his trail name.
Got it. Okay, I'm there now. I'm glad we cleared that up. And and something about the AT, and it's certainly something that struck me this year. When I went first time, I was fearful of pretty much everything when I first started because I didn't know what hiking was like. I'd never hiked in my life, and I know you've been hiking for some time because I've seen various Facebook posts that you've done, son. And back in 2012, you don't have to think back, so I'm going to quote exactly what you wrote, which was really interesting. You wrote something, and one of the things I became very aware of on the trail was the need to stay be in the moment when you're out there hiking, as opposed to looking forward to what you're going to be finishing next or what you're going to be doing next. And one of the things you said was, what would happen if I gave into the idea that this moment is perfect? In this moment, I take one breath. Perfect. And I entirely relate to that. And it's something I worked on when I was hiking. How easy was it for you to stay in the moment when you're on the trail? Or are you one of these people who is target oriented and looking to get things done and get miles done? Or were you able to stay in the moment?
I think that's a skill that I'm continuing to practice.
Yeah.
And I think that's a journey for me.
Right.
I tend to try to rush to the conclusion, and one of the biggest things that I practice in my life is drawing myself back into the moment and staying right where I'm at and appreciating the blessings in my life and the things that I'm doing and the connections that I'm making with people around me.
Yeah.
And I think that statement that you're referring to, I think that's one of the first times that I started to really flesh that out as a idea that was relevant and something I wanted to work for.
I think we suffer.
I think it's better.
I think we all suffer from it to a degree, and it's one of the things that, and suddenly it's one of the themes in my mind. Having having had a little bit longer to reflect upon my journey this year than you have so far. And I'm just 3 weeks back or something like that, and I remember last time, and I certainly know this time, when Katahdin got in my mind, I couldn't get it out of my mind. So I found it difficult to stay in the moment because I was looking to the end, if you know what I mean. Did you find yourself looking for it to be over at Katahdin?
I was really tired. So I was ready to go home, but this particular trail didn't feel like an ending. It just felt like it's a kind of flow from the other trails that I've done. And then I've also done the Appalachian Trail this year, and there will be more paths to walk.
Right.
And so I was ready to go home, but it didn't feel as dramatic. At least today, just a few days after finishing, I remember I sunk into a pretty profound depression after I was done with the Pacific Crest Trail.
Right.
And that hasn't hit me yet.
Did you sink into it straight away after the PCT?
Pretty quickly.
And how did you get out of it in the end?
Pretty quickly.
How did you get out of it?
I had a lot of support from my husband.
Right.
And he was just very gentle with me and encouraged me that, I could feel like that, but that there were more adventures, that we would have more adventures. And I think that encouragement, that there are more adventures to have, that wasn't the pinnacle of, I guess I had felt like after the Pacific Crest Trail, that was the pinnacle of my athletic and outdoor experience. So it just felt like so overwhelmingly huge that nothing could ever compare to it. And I don't think I feel that way anymore.
Because
I just feel like...
It's interesting because another of your Facebook posts, and I say this, it was very interesting to me this morning to basically stalk you again. There was a picture of you and your son taking a little walk on the AT, and he said that was last year, and you commented recently on that picture that you never imagined that you'd hike the entire AT. So what happened between then and whenever you started in, you say March this year? When did the idea form to actually go ahead and do the AT?
So the AT was the first long trail that I was ever aware of.
Right. Back
before my son was born. So before he was born, I made a bucket list of things I wanted to do in my life, and the AT was on the list.
Right.
And then I went ahead and went through and did the PCT, and I had my son, and I was like, okay, so that's kind of wrapped up. I'm satisfied now. I did the thing. I did a long trail. It wasn't the AT, but it was a long trail, and I'm satisfied. And then last fall, November, I think around Thanksgiving, I was like, Pete, I'm really starting to get concerned about the summer because Emerson's hitting puberty. He's kind of too old for day camps, and he's kind of too young to be hanging out at home, driving me nuts all the time. And so I was like, Pete, we really have to come up with a plan for how to manage having a very active young person.
Yeah.
We can't just have him be at home. So I need something else that we can do. We got to figure this out. And he said, well, why don't you just go hike the AT? It's a really good year to do it. I'm starting a new job, so I'll be busy. And so right around Christmas, so I thought that was just an idea.
Sure.
And right around Christmas, his parents gave me a gift basket of gifts, all relating to the AT. And I was like, how do your parents know about my obsession with the AT?
It's a
and
conspiracy.
He said, I told them that you're going to hike it this summer. And I was like, okay, great.
Wow.
I didn't know that was a thing we had decided, but I'm for it. So we then had the conversation about how that would work and the logistics.
By the way, Emerson's really going to thank you for mentioning his puberty on the air. So so we'll see how that works out, shall we? But so what did he think about doing it? Did he want to do it?
He had mixed feelings.
Right.
He's really into his friends right now, and so he felt a little bit concerned about not seeing his friends for several months in the summer. But then as the trip got closer, he did pack his own bag and got excited about it. And I'd never been away from him that long. So
Sure.
He was anxious to see me, and I was anxious to see him. Yeah. And we ended up doing 550 miles. His last full day was on Mount Washington.
Oh, right. Did he want to stay longer, or he just couldn't because of school?
He wanted to stay longer, but we made the decision that because it's middle school and we wanted him to get in on all the orientation get a good head start rather than coming in late this year.
Do you think this has planted a seed in him, though, to finish this trail at some stage, do the whole thing?
I think he might go back. And he even, while we were walking, he spent quite a good deal of time thinking of friends who might enjoy distance hiking with him.
Wow.
And also talking about how, that maybe he'd want to do the rest of the AT. So he did mention that.
Right.
And, he told me once the funniest thing. He said, I said, do you like distance hiking? And he said, well, Mama, like, it's your thing. So right now, where I'm at in my life, it can't be my thing. But maybe someday it could be my thing.
What a mature thing to say that was. Oh, my gosh. That really is something.
I thought that was really apt and probably pretty close to true for a kid who's 12.
I've often wondered what, now you've mentioned the word puberty kids, how they cope on the trail with the people they meet, because they mainly meet adults, don't they? There were a couple of youngsters there.
Right.
Is he quite a socialized kid anyway? Not kid. Sorry, I apologize, Emerson, but you know what I mean. Is he quite a socialized youngster anyway? Is he? And how was he with other people?
I feel pretty pleased with his interactions with adults. Sometimes he'll get excited and overstay his welcome. He's able to keep up with faster hikers.
Right.
And so sometimes I felt like maybe he might overstay his welcome, but we worked through some good conversation skills, to ask people, do you want to continue this conversation, or is it okay if I hike with you?
Sure.
And I did witness him using those skills. And so I felt like he does a really good job. He really enjoys meeting people and learning about things that they're excited about and things that they're experts in.
I think the AT gives you the platform just to have conversations without distractions, doesn't it?
It does.
This thing about, the thing I say, it's a thing that's going around in my mind all the time. I've just got too many distractions and options back at home now. Having so few options on the trail has been wonderful for me. And in fact, the other day I was attending a charity event and I had to walk out. I was organising part of it. And I had to walk outside for about 20 minutes just to be by myself. I didn't like all the noise around me. So you do get definitely a different look at life when you get out there, and the time to sit and talk with people is wonderful, I found anyway. Now, it is true. The majority of people on the trail that I'm sure you met, and certainly I met, are youngsters during or just after college and old fogies like me. So how does a woman in her early 40s manage to fit such an undertaking into her life?
I got really lucky and married a man who really loves to enable adventurers. Wow. So this adventure, I have to say, it was a bit more than we bargained for. So the what you see is all the pretty pictures. Sure. And there were a lot of hard things behind the scenes. And the reality is that we came through it and we like each other. And but like trying to turn over like parenting and household. Sure. And and then like the missteps that I would make on commenting on, accidentally commenting on how he handled something, or I would do it this way. And then just like realizing how wrong I was. So some of those things aren't on Facebook.
Yes. Which for a good reason, by the way, for good reason. It was not easy, but I got lucky. Emerson is 12. So he's very self-sufficient and is able to get himself ready for school in the morning and can do a lot for himself and also be helpful. So, but has this second through hike, has it given you the taste to do a Triple Crown, or is your experience with, not so much with your husband, with the logistics, let's say, of managing a through hike, has that been tempered a little bit with making it more difficult to do the CDT for a Triple Crown? I think that the CDT is still in my mind to do. Right now, it's hard to think about. Sure, I understand that. How that might happen. Yes. Yeah. But it was 3 years between the PCT and the AT, and
I feel like there are parts of the CDT that I'm very excited about traveling. There's also a lot of parts of the CDT that are kind of monotonous road walks that
Sure.
may not be as interesting. But what Pete and I talked about, even just as we were driving away from the mountain a few days ago, what we kind of thought about, like, how would we do the CDT, and what would it take to make it work better for us?
Right. But you're the hiker, though. You're the hiker. I mean, is he not a hiker, or he doesn't want to hike, or he just prefers to do day hikes?
We hike every Sunday.
All right.
Backpacking has been, we have done some backpacking trips. There are some challenges there that make it difficult for Pete to do backpacking.
Right.
So we do shorter trips, but he does love what he loves the most is coming to find me in the woods. So he's very excited to throw on a day pack and hike in to find me and hike out with me.
That's
or
rather
to come
nice.
and camp at a trailhead.
That's rather nice. That really is.
Yeah.
So, and something I noticed, I think you wrote it, I'm not sure, but it becomes apparent when you see the pictures. Why do you wear red shirts when you hike? Is that a thing for you? Could you comment on it?
It is now a thing. I think I like the color red for one. So I do have red shirts anyways. And I also, my grandmother, as she got older, she would only wear red shirts. And so it makes me feel warm and cozy feelings to wear a red shirt. And also I like to be really visible. So my options are like orange, pink, red.
Yeah. The visibility is a good idea, by the way. A very good idea. Especially during hunting season. You don't want any of that.
Right.
So looking back, and I know you haven't had the chance to look back. So if you imagine the highlight reel in your head, what were the highlights for you in terms of places you went to and things you saw? I mean, I presume Katahdin's one of the highlights, but were there other things as well?
So I really enjoyed Grayson Highlands.
So right.
That was just a really fun. It was just fun. There was like a lot of pretty views, and there was the rocks to climb over, and of course the ponies.
Sure.
I found the ponies very quirky and delightful, and so that was a really fun day. Franconia Ridge.
They try to lick everything sweaty, don't they? the
yes.
ponies.
There was a mother and a small baby, and the mama pony came trotting up to me with her baby in tow and started licking my arm, and the baby licked the other arm, and I was just laughing so hard because I didn't expect it, and I wasn't afraid, but I was just so surprised because I had no intention of getting close to them.
Yes, all right, yeah. And you mentioned Franconia Ridge. That is amazing, isn't it? Don't you think that's one of the almost like one of the wonders of the world when you go above tree line and see it for the first time?
You know, and the uphill, the ascent to the ridge is quite steep and strenuous, almost like a stair-stepping machine, just very, very steep.
Yeah.
And then you get up to the top and you blast out into this beautiful ridge with all the rocks and the very distant views. And I was lucky to have a really gorgeous day with, no clouds, and it was just really, really a pretty day. So, and it's quite long, like 3 or 4 miles.
Oh, it's quite long.
So it's quite a way.
Yeah, and there's some pretty good climbs within it as well, aren't there? So it's not as if it's easy once you get up there either. I mean, it was tough.
I never noticed the when I'm above the tree line. I never noticed the climbs not as nearly as much because I'm so excited to see all of the things around me, and you can see down how far you've came, and it's very satisfying to look down and see, oh wow, I've come up this far, that like in only 15 minutes.
Yeah, I actually agree with you, but I also think that having a good day to do it on makes so much difference as well, because you can see so much further, and the whole thing you've got the whole thing in perspective, haven't you? And I just absolutely love it. And what about lowlights? So were there any times you thought, well, I could have done without that?
Let's see. I had to file a protection order against a man in Damascus, Virginia.
Oh my gosh.
And that was pretty upsetting and disturbing.
Wow.
he had been harassing multiple women, and the women's group had started to collate reports of this guy.
Wow.
And I was up the hill and realized that he was in Damascus, and I was hiking into Damascus.
Right.
And at this point I was afraid of him.
Okay.
So I went directly to the police department, and anyways, it was not a nice scene. And I ended up filing a protection order against him, and I'm pretty sure he left the trail and maybe the country.
Wow.
Yeah.
I just did you find generally
that was a low light?
Yeah, I'm sure it was. I'm sure it was. And you know what? And I kind of hope women listening to this realize, well, I know I've always said this is a safe place to be, and generally it is a safe place to be. And I know we had the murder this year, which was terrible, obviously, but generally I would say the place and the people are 99.9% safe, wouldn't you?
Generally, I feel very comfortable and very safe when I'm out in the wild. Generally, I don't have any problem. Generally, the people that I meet, the men that I meet, they relate to me like a dad, an uncle, a brother. Yeah. And I feel very comfortable. I don't have any problems going into camp and striking up a conversation.
Yeah.
And
I think people just have to be careful. And like anywhere in the world, you have to choose your moments, don't you, really? And choose your people as well sometimes.
And also, like, one of the skills that I picked up very quickly as a woman is if I feel uncomfortable in a situation or with a person, I find whoever I do feel comfortable with, and I tell that person, I'm not comfortable with so and so. I'm feeling like uncomfortable being around them. Will you stay next to me?
Sure.
Will you still stay close? Will you keep an eye on what's happening?
Yeah.
And that really is a good way to engage the community. Yes. And the community is really good about circling wagons around women. And and generally I have a really good experience, a good, safe, enjoyable experience, and really great conversations with people I meet.
Sure. Well, look, I hope the depression doesn't settle down upon you like it maybe did last time. And I hope that you realize how accomplished you are now. I still think that's the word that sticks with me. It's an accomplishment to finish this hike. You did it. I mean, you've done it. You've done 2 now. So it's quite something. And I hope you get the chance to do the Triple Crown. And thanks for telling your story.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much. Bye.
All right. Bye.
Considering that I didn't have my normal preparation for a show, I thought my cyber stalking worked out pretty well, didn't you? Her warning story near the end shows the importance of reporting bad characters when you come across them. I know that people are on high alert this year, as they very much should be, and I thought that Olivia handled her situation sensibly. She asked afterwards if I wanted to leave that part out, but I think it's important to show the risks as well as how people manage them, so I left it in. Thanks, Olivia. Now to the Mighty Blue class of 2019. Last week we heard from Margie Mims, our first to get to Katahdin this year. So this week we hear from Lea Ann Hogan, who had a great hike but didn't make it to the end. You may be surprised why not. Here's Lea Ann. So hi, Lea Ann, how are you?
I'm well, thanks. How are you, Steve?
I'm very good now, because we couldn't get the audio sorted out before. It seems to be working quite well now. So you were one of the Mighty Blue class of 2019, and I know you didn't finish, but tell everybody what happened, how your hike worked out for you.
Well, I made it a total of 502 miles.
Okay.
Started February 21st and ended May 2nd. At about 250 miles, the family was starting to want me to come home. I don't think they had thought I would stick it out that long.
Oh, that was pain. That must have been painful. How did that conversation work out then?
It's like, are you really going to stay out there that long? I don't think this. Well, yeah. So, I didn't want to just stop.
Right.
I wanted to. So I set a different goal. I set 500 miles. I looked at the map. 502 was Massey Gap in the Grayson Highlands, so it worked out perfect.
Right.
About that time, I'd also started hiking with somebody else who was running into the same issues at home. So we were not quitting. We were just changing our path, and we intend to finish it.
All right.
over the course of a few more years.
I've not heard this before from people, that there was an issue at home. Was it a particular issue that they were missing you, or they needed somebody to do the washing up? I mean, how was it? Was the whole family just not coping?
I think basically they kind of missed the support system that I provided, and just dealing with day in, day out. They're used to me picking up a bit of that slack. And
yeah, how interesting. How interesting. It's one of the things that we've often said on the show, that spousal support and children support, support of your family and friends is quite important when it comes to this. So did you start fretting about this or worrying about this, that they were getting concerned?
I was more frustrated with it than fretting, I suppose. I had told them what my intentions were. I had told them what it was going to take, and they acknowledged that. But when push came to shove, I think the reality set in, and they weren't quite as prepared as they thought.
Wow.
Or I was more prepared than they thought.
So you thought about it, and when you think about it now anyway, you eventually hiked 500 miles, you say 502 miles. That is an amazing accomplishment anyway in itself. So is that how it feels to you, or does it feel not so good to you?
Actually, the weather was starting to heat up. Right. The bugs were starting to come out. Yeah. And those were my two things that I had told you previously at the beginning that would be my nemesis.
Right. That was why you started a bit earlier, wasn't it? Yeah, that was one of the reasons you started quite early, yeah.
Exactly. So it kind of was perhaps a relief in a way. I was able to call the shots. I didn't just quit. I went ahead and did double of what, where they wanted me to come home. And I have somebody that I met on trail that she's it's like we're soul sisters,
right?
And we're both in it to finish this trail together. And it may take us a few more years than the 6 months we thought, but we're going to work it out.
So she has similar issues to you. So there was pressure from home. So once you realised that the through hike wasn't going to happen on this year anyway, but you turned it into is it a lash long section hike?
Lash.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Did your mindset change when you turned it into a long section, or did you treat it as this is now my goal, and so this is just as a valid a goal? Was there a mindset shift that you had to make?
I had a mindset shift, but it wasn't maybe the way you think.
Right.
I still had the goal. My goal just changed, my end goal for that time period, but it made the hike more enjoyable.
Oh, how interesting. Why is that?
I didn't have to worry about making X number of miles.
Right.
I was going to make it to 502, and it didn't matter how long it took because it would be less than 6 months.
Right.
And I also didn't worry about money. I just, when the weather looked bad, we went into town and found a place to stay out of the weather and went back out on the trail. We spent a couple of bad days on the trail because you get that in between stops, but it just made the hike more enjoyable. It took the pressure off, and we weren't concerned about.
So you spent the 2,000 mile budget on 500 miles. Excellent idea. That's definitely the way forward.
I didn't spend it all that way, but I didn't have to use that as a consideration of whether or not to spend an extra day in town because of weather.
That's good. That makes a lot of sense, actually. Yeah, and we actually met on trail, and we hiked together for a few miles, didn't we, as well?
We did.
Did you? I heard. Did you get an injury or back injury? You were in Franklin for some while. I seem to. Did you get injured?
No, I didn't.
Oh, right. Okay.
I wasn't injured. My friend that I started hiking with, she did get an illness. It took us back a day, but. Right. We were able to push through. We did try to do Vermont just last month.
Right.
And her knee went out. She had a meniscal tear. Yeah.
Right.
So
and
we
500,
didn't get that done.
And 500 miles, as I say, it's quite the distance. Did you feel, once you'd done those 500 miles, did you think, I can do this. I'm physically and mentally capable of making it to the end. Was that something that, had you not had that interruption, as it were, from home, you would have made it to the end?
I would like to think I would, but not doing it, I can't say for sure.
No,
I know that other friends that I'd made on trail, like Hawkeye and Waffle, they quit at like 1,500 miles, or 1,300 miles, 1,500 miles. I can't remember.
Yes, that's right.
In New Jersey.
Oh, you met them, did you? I was in communication with their mother quite regularly. She was telling me about their story as well. So that was a young lad, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and you're hiking with
and
them.
We hiked off and on with them as well, yes.
So I think by 500 miles, then you must have reached the Grayson Highlands,
I did.
Which is magnificent.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And the ponies chewed on my trekking pole straps. And
Of course they did. Of course they did. Was that a highlight, or were there other places that attracted you more? Because I thought Grayson Highlands was one of the really great early highlights. I loved it there.
I did love it. I loved the rocks just after the shelter where the ponies are. Between the shelter and Massey Gap, that last few miles was really special.
Well, I'm sure it was, because you knew you were finishing there as well, didn't you?
Yeah.
I found those rocks quite tough personally. I remember them well.
Very bittersweet.
Yeah, I'm sure it was. So when you did get to the end, was there a feeling of accomplishment at that point? 500 miles, as I say, is a good stretch. So did you feel good about it, or having got your mindset in such a way as that you knew you were going home? What were you feeling then?
I felt like I had accomplished what I had altered my goal for, but it was hard to leave the trail.
I'm sure. Did your friend leave the trail then as well?
Yes.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
We both we did a little transition. We went out and did a float down the river to transition before going back home.
All right. So what surprised you about the trail? Because I know you obviously researched it when you started. Was there anything about it that really took you by surprise, or was it exactly as you'd imagined it would be?
What surprised me was the way people would come in and out of your life on the trail.
Yes.
I know that there were a lot of people who hiked a lot faster than me, but I saw them over and over again, maybe because they had taken some time off trail and were getting back on, or days off or injury or whatever. But Hungry Man, I met him on my first day. I met him outside of the NOC, and he hiked a lot faster than I did, hiking around Hawkeye and Waffle and other characters. And you yourself just bouncing back and forth on trail with you being ahead or behind or at the same time.
Yes, it's funny how that happens.
It's amazing to me.
Yeah, it's a lovely serendipity about the trail, isn't it? You could bump into somebody you literally haven't seen. Like in my case, once I didn't see somebody for 1,500 miles after I first met them, and then saw them again in Maine. It's kind of extraordinary, really, how that happens. And so, apart from not finishing your original plan, were there other disappointments, or did the trail feel really make you? Did you really enjoy the trail?
The trail was everything I thought it would be and more.
That's lovely.
No disappointments with the trail itself, just in not being able to stay out there, perhaps. But I do have that to look forward to, going back each spring and hopefully occasionally in the fall as well until we finish it up.
Yeah. Are you going to try to do it in another 500-mile hit, or are you going to do it in shorter sections?
It's going to have to be in shorter sections. We're only going to be able to go out for a month at a stretch.
All right, I see.
2 months, whatever. And the big disappointment was at 500 miles, I had just felt like I'd come into trail legs. And it's I think I can finally start to make more miles.
That is terrible. That is terrible. You got your trail
not
legs.
being able to experience that.
Oh, it's a fantastic feeling. Yeah, it took me about 300 or 400 miles as well. So once you get the no, you're done. You're ready to go, and it really kind of works out for you. And did the equipment you take work as well as you'd hoped? And would you be changing any equipment because of your experience of those 500 miles?
No, everything worked out pretty much the way I wanted it to. I would have liked a lighter pack, but
who wouldn't?
I'll have to figure out. I don't know what I would do different, other than my summer gear would have been lighter. When we went out to Vermont, I think I was about 6 pounds lighter in my pack.
All right, it's quite a lot.
Just changing out to summer gear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what do you think? Do you think you learned something about yourself on the hike? I say, you did a quarter of the trail, and that's out there for quite a long period of time. Were there things about you that you discovered on the trail?
There was a big spiritual connection for me with the trail.
Oh.
And that was not something that I had anticipated being so strong.
Right.
But
Nice. Well, I was sad for you because I did know you were going to leave the trail after. I think I knew quite early on. I think either you told me or I contacted you around that time, and
yes.
and I really enjoyed meeting you because you seemed very determined at the time as well. So it was sad that you got off, but I'm so pleased you're going to get back on. So what I hope you do is just stay in contact with me and let me know when you go again, and just let me know, and we'll try to keep track of your section your section hikes and see as you work your way up the trail in the next couple of years.
That'll be wonderful. I will.
That's super.
I will definitely stay in touch.
Well, I really appreciate you talking to us and coming back and having a bit of a debrief. But, 500 miles ain't nothing, I tell you.
And another regret. I didn't get to meet Turd Ferguson. We just missed each other somehow on the trail.
Yeah, I've met him. It's okay. It's okay. You didn't miss much. No.
We're both from the same hometown.
I know you are. I know you are. He wanted to meet you. I was hiking with him for quite a while myself, so it was lovely to meet you guys out there, and to have that chance to sort of have those conversations. And we had a conversation on the trail, so I'm so glad we did meet. And I really hope we can talk again on the show.
I am looking forward to it.
Okay. Well, look, let me know when you go next, and we'll keep in touch. All right.
Thanks, Steve. Will do.
Okay. Cheers then. Bye.
Bye.
Did you hear the hesitance in Lea Ann's voice? She's such a trooper. She was choosing her words carefully, you could tell, so as not to upset her family, but you could tell also that she wasn't happy to have to quit. She was very reflective, a quality in her that I noticed when I spoke with her on the trail. Such a pity that she couldn't continue, but as you heard, she made the best of it and has plans to complete the trail going forward. Good for you, Lea Ann. Finally, this week, we're up to Chapter 3 of Paul Stutzman's Hiking Through, with Paul about to hit the trail. I'll see you next week. Chapter 3, The Narrow Path. Every year, several thousand believers answer the call to make a pilgrimage from Springer Mountain, Georgia, to another mountaintop 2,176 miles away. Of these thousands, only several hundred are chosen to finish. Chosen? Yes. If you are ever one of those solitary Appalachian Trail through hikers and you somehow survive 300 daunting mountains, precarious river crossings, difficult rock climbs, discouraging illness and loneliness, and punishing weather, and you stand at last at the summit of mighty Mount Katahdin, then you will indeed know what it is like to be one of those chosen few. You are then forever part of the brotherhood and sisterhood of the AT. Whether you are God-fearing, agnostic, or atheist, you are irrevocably changed. Some of the changed are better equipped to deal with society. Some never find a place to fit. Only your trail brothers and sisters will understand the transformations within you. As much as you want your friends and family to know how and why you have changed so dramatically, you cannot describe where your wilderness journey has taken you. But still, we try. More books have been written about the Appalachian Trail than any other trail in America. Something life-changing and unique happens to through hikers on the AT that makes this one trail almost mythical and compels us hikers to write about our journeys. I am convinced it's all about community, our interaction with fellow hikers and those folks we meet in trail towns. It's also about being alone. The solitude always coupled with knowledge that safe harbor is never too far away. There was much to do. Most hikers spend at least a year planning this hike. I had 2 months. Decisions about equipment, clothing, food, shoes, and water supply loomed large. Weight was a big factor. I'd carry everything on my back for the next 5 months. 20 years before, comfort might not have been a consideration, but now my body demanded a vote on tent, sleeping pad, and sleeping bag. For every piece of equipment, I found so many different companies and models, all claiming superiority, that I felt overwhelmed by information. My smartest move was finding an outfitter with an employee who had completed a through hike. Based on his assurance that I would encounter cold and snow in April, I purchased a 5-degree Montbell down sleeping bag. There are reasons to avoid downfill bags, and in hindsight, I actually would not recommend them. But this heavy bag did keep me from turning into a popsicle on cold nights in the Smoky Mountains. Many hikers spend much time drying and packaging their own food. I had neither the time nor the desire to do so. Instead, I bought freeze-dried food. Cooking dinner would mean boiling 12 ounces of water, pouring it into a foil bag containing 4 ounces of food, waiting 10 minutes, and then relishing a 1-pound meal. That meal would supply 500 calories, and additional nutrition would come from trail mix, energy bars, breakfast bars, candy bars, and Little Debbie's. I planned to carry a week's supply of food, and I would call my trail boss with instructions on where and when to send each subsequent food box. Ina, my friend and co-worker, would be my trail boss. Support at home is crucial for conquest of the AT. Small details can have large repercussions. For example, if a food drop arrives at a post office on Saturday, but the hiker doesn't arrive before noon, chances are that the food can't be picked up until the post office opens again on Monday. Thus, an entire day is lost. Planning food deliveries also involves choosing the best pickup location, whether a post office or hostel. I found myself paralyzed by uncertainty and doubt. Can I hike through 14 states and over 2,000 miles? After much mental jousting with my fears, I knew my choice must be to believe. The AT was teaching me before I had left a single footprint on the trail. Had I known all the results of my choices, all the details of the next months, all that waited for me on the trail, I probably would have rapidly backed away from a path so difficult. But I would also have missed the most incredible journey of my life. It was not only an incredible journey on my own 2 feet, wandering through spectacular creation, but also a journey of discovery through the landscape of my mind and heart. Preparation for a long-distance hike should include building an appropriate degree of physical fitness. Although I was not a total ball of flab, 25 years of pies, pastries, and rich restaurant food had created 20 pounds more of me than was necessary. Winters in Ohio are not conducive to any kind of exercise regimen. Hence, my only physical preparation for the trail consisted of several trips up and down the stairs with my loaded pack. How difficult could this be anyway, this idyllic footpath, this extended walk in the park? Sure, I'd have extra weight on my back, but I reasoned that every pound of body weight I lost will be like an extra pound taken out of my backpack. My math reassured me. If I carried a 35-pound pack, but lost 20 pounds, it would feel like I was carrying only 15 pounds. Oh, my math was so wrong. Saturday, March the 29th, 2008. 2 months had passed quickly and my final day at the restaurant had arrived. Normally, our Saturdays were very busy, so I went about my routine, trying to keep a sense of normalcy. Doubts had crept in countless times since I had sent my resignation letter. Was this what God wanted me to do? Could I change my mind? But there was no turning back. A new manager had already been hired. I was free to go. My mind raced through jumbled thoughts and emotions, some logical, some philosophical, some wildly irrational. How could anyone replace me so quickly? This place can't survive without me. How can I give up everything here to become a jobless bum? But some rational brain cell came forward and admonished me. Just leave already. There is probably someone in the dining room choking on a piece of bacon right now, while the new manager has to explain to an irate customer why the eggs turned green. I took one more sentimental journey through every corner of my stress factory. I'd already said my farewells to loyal friends and co-workers, so I finished my memory walk, turned my back on my safety net, and walked away. I couldn't give myself one unoccupied moment, or I would have to face the fact that I was unemployed. I decided to leave for the trail that very day. My backpack was ready, and in a few hours I went from maintaining a job in a house to lugging around a 35-pound bag that held everything I need to survive in the wilderness. Amicolola State Park, 20 miles east of Ellijay, Georgia, was my destination. Amicolola Falls is a series of 7 falls dropping a total of 729 feet down a rocky mountainside. The name itself is Cherokee for tumbling waters. At the base of the falls I stood wrapped in a blanket of mist. Taking comfort from the sound of the falling water, I felt a kinship with this river. My life, flowing merrily along, has suddenly arrived at an abyss where everything fell away and the waters tumbled and crashed over the edge. But after the abrupt, headlong plunge down the cliff, the river quiets itself in pools and then moves on steadily and unhindered. I wanted the same for my life. I was finally here at the southern terminus of the Appalachian Trail. Tomorrow I will take my first steps on the trail that had held my dreams for so long. Through hikers stop at the visitor center in the state park and sign their first register on the trail. These notebooks log hikers' progress and record their thoughts along the way. Hikers leave information, warnings, encouragement or gripes for those coming after them. I browsed back through several weeks of entries, looking for names I recognised from reading the Trail Journal's website. The Trail Journal site was created for hikers to post journal entries so family and friends can follow their progress. Folks at home can also send messages to a hiker. The site is a great place to gather information. For several years I'd hiked vicariously with thru hikers. Now I was no longer a reader of trail journals. I would be one of the writers. I entered my name in the register and officially became hiker number 391, attempting to walk from Georgia to Maine. In my room at the Amicolola Lodge, I spread out my equipment. Nervously, I packed and repacked my backpack. Should the tent go in flat or upright? 2 litres of water or 3? I filtered water from the room faucet, just for practice. The night was restless and long. A blanket of fog dropped before morning, making visibility almost zero. It delayed my departure for a few hours, which I filled by needlessly unpacking and repacking several more times. The fog at last lifted, and I set out to find the trailhead somewhere at the top of Springer Mountain. An 8-mile approach trail leads from the lodge to the trailhead on the mountain. It's a blue blaze trail, which means it is not an official part of the Appalachian Trail, which is marked with white blazes. I could either hike or drive to the summit trailhead, where I would start my thru hike. My trail boss, Ina, had driven to Georgia with me to return my car to Ohio, and since she had not yet departed with my car, I chose to drive to the trailhead. As it turned out, it would have been easier to hike the 8 miles. U.S. Forest Service Road 42 was made for a 4-wheel drive vehicle, not my family sedan. We bumped around, over, and through ruts and rocks and arrived at a sparsely gravelled parking area at Big Stamp Gap. Another vehicle was unloading hikers. Someone was giving them directions. Head south for the start of the trail. That can't be right. Maine's north. I hadn't even taken my first steps in the trail, and already I was confused. I realised then that the trail went right through the parking lot, with one path leading north and one leading south. The official beginning of the AT did indeed start 1 mile south of where we stood. So the first mile of my hike would be south to the start of the trail, and then I'd hike back to this parking lot again and continue through it northward. Since I would be hiking back to this spot, I convinced Ina to hike those first 2 miles with me. I had persuaded her to take a day off work to deliver me to Georgia, and how I was going to squeeze 2 more miles out of her. Actually, it was just a ploy to delay the loneliness that I already sensed was waiting for me just a few steps into those woods. A cluster of gnarled trees and an outcropping of rocks greeted me when I arrived at last at the southern terminus of the Appalachian Trail. On one large rock was the first white blaze of the trail. For the next 2,176 miles, those small 2x6-inch painted white marks would be my road map, almost 80,000 of them on trees, rocks, signs, buildings, and even railroad ties. Adjacent to the first blaze, a bronze plaque embedded in the rock bore the image of a hiker and the inscription, Appalachian Trail, Georgia to Maine, a footpath for those who seek fellowship with the wilderness. I posed for a photo at the first blaze and then signed the register. Enclosed in a plastic bag, the fat notebook contained entries from optimistic hikers, often bold or brave statements. My entry simply read, Apostle, heading to Maine. We finally arrived back at the parking lot, 1 mile of the trail under my feet. With a heavy heart, I hoisted my pack. The time had finally arrived. Just when I thought this day could not possibly get sadder and more depressing, it started to rain. I dropped my pack again, and for the first of many times in the months to come, I put on rain gear. I was scared. I wondered if this was the worst decision of my life. My friend and I had said goodbye, and there was nothing more to say. As I watched the car disappear down that dirt road, I felt more alone than I'd ever felt in my life. The raindrops and my tears fell together as I turned and trudged into the woods. After snivelling along for a short distance, I stopped to compose myself and take stock of the situation. Let's see. You quit your job, you're standing alone in the woods in Georgia, and you plan to hike 2,176 miles to Maine. You have never camped for more than a weekend in your life, and you intend to live in a tent for almost 5 months. Yes, indeed, that does make a lot of sense. Now get moving. It took some time, but my emotions finally settled down, and I began to notice my surroundings. I was walking on a carpet of pine needles through a stand of cathedral hemlocks. Stover Creek flowed to the right, and the song of running water soothed my saddened spirit. For several miles, the trail was the idyllic pathway in the woods of my dreams. Several hikers had overtaken me. We paused to chat, and as they moved on, I wondered if we would meet again in the days to come. My start date determined who I would meet on the trail. Beginning one day earlier or one day later would have changed my personal interactions all the way to Maine. Who was I destined to meet when I chose March the 31st to begin walking north? Several miles later, I stopped for a lunch break and experienced for the first time that great relief of slipping the heavy pack off my back. Another 8 miles brought me to Hawk Mountain Shelter. It was only 4 o'clock, but the next shelter was 7 miles away. I approached this shelter with the intention of stopping, but soon realized it was already full. If I stayed here, I would have to set up my tent nearby. While I considered my options, 2 hikers left the shelter, having decided the building was too full and it was too early to stop. Their plan was to hike several more miles, then set up camp in the woods. I asked to join them and was graciously received. "What's your trail name?" one of them asked. "Apostle," I replied. "Apostle Paul. I'm hiking to Damascus, hoping for an enlightening experience. Damascus, Virginia, that is." Then on to Maine. They found the humour in my biblical reference and introduced themselves as Marathon Man and Lion King. Most hikers are known by trail names. In earlier years, a hiker would often gain such a moniker as a result of some stupid or habitual action on his part, and the nickname would follow him forever on the trail. Nose picker, or gas bag, or sometimes something much worse. Most through hikers today choose their own names before setting foot on the trail as a means of avoiding this potential denigration by fellow hikers. I chose an apostle not only because my name was Paul, but because the definition of apostle is one sent forth on a special mission. The 3 of us hiked several more miles and stopped to Horse Gap, just a small clearing in the woods with a creek running along one side. We would set up camp here. It was time to unfurl Big Agnes. Big Agnes was my tent. Shopping for my home away from home during those 2 frantic months of preparation, I knew I wanted something big enough to hold myself, plus all my worldly possessions. I chose a Big Agnes Seed House SL2. This 2-person tent weighed 9 ounces more than the 1-person model. I agonized over adding those extra 9 ounces, but in the end, I chose the luxury of additional space. By the time I got to Maine, I realized that 9 ounces of luxury carried 2,176 miles translates into lots of extra exertion. With our tents pitched and meals eaten, it was time for us to hang our bear bags. We were hiking through bear country and had been advised to hang our bags from a sturdy tree branch, out of any prowler's reach. I realized in dismay that the only appropriate branch was directly over my tent. Just great. The bear could use my tent as a launching pad to reach those food bags. It was not a comforting picture. Rather than relocate my tent, we headed farther into the woods, searching for a suitable branch. I know what you're thinking. You're surrounded by trees. Shouldn't there be branches everywhere? But as I would learn, finding a good branch for bear bags is never easy. We made many attempts to hurl a weighted rope over a good branch. I must report our throws were mostly unsuccessful. We broke several perfectly good branches in the process. Finally, we lassoed our branch and hung our 3 food bags, a tantalizing buffet we hoped was out of the reach of any forest marauders. The rain had started again and was coming down hard by the time I finished filtering my water. It was 8 o'clock, hiker midnight as it's known on the trail. I scrambled out of my soaked clothes and snuggled into my fluffy, down-filled sleeping bag. The first day of my lifelong dream was complete. I was utterly weary from both the physical and emotional ordeal of the day, but I had survived one day. I got very little sleep that night, kept awake by raindrops pinging on my tent and my still churning emotions of the day. I wondered what lay ahead of me on this narrow path to Maine.